The Forgotten Myth. In the far reaches of the galaxy, far beyond the influence of the Galactic Council, old myths were told about a race of beings who had once been powerful, too powerful. These beings were known as humans, but to the galaxy's greatest minds, they were nothing more than an ancient legend. Many believe they had been wiped out long ago, their homeworld destroyed in an unseen war. The story of humanity had faded into myth, with only a few scattered remnants of their technology remaining. No one believed humans were still alive. The Galactic Council, made up of the most advanced species in the universe, governed everything from trade to law. They were powerful, untouchable, and above all, secure in their position as rulers of the galaxy. But on the edge of their known space, in the uncharted voids, whispers of strange occurrences began to surface. The first warning came from a small scout ship on routine patrol. The captain, a seasoned commander of the Zortan race, was a pragmatic and cautious individual. When his ship's sensors detected an anomaly in a remote system, he thought nothing of it. It was probably a small asteroid field or a glitch in the equipment. However, as they approached the source of the disturbance, the readings grew stronger and more unusual. The ship's AI system went into overdrive, but no matter what data it processed, nothing made sense. There was no clear explanation for the energy readings coming from a planet far below them. It was too old, far too old, to still be active. Suddenly, their communication system buzzed with an urgent message from the Council. The Zortan captain read it aloud to his crew, his voice tense. "Return immediately. Something is wrong." Reluctantly, the captain ordered the ship to turn back. But before they could depart, a flash of light erupted from the shadows of the distant moon, and a vast shape appeared in the corner of their scanners. It was a warship, but it wasn't like anything they had ever seen before. The ship was massive. Its hull unlike any known technology. It radiated power, and energy that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned crew members. It was as if the ship itself was an ancient beast, waiting patiently in the darkness of space. The captain quickly ordered the ship to disengage, but the warship didn't give them a chance to retreat. Within moments, a transmission came through, but the words were in a language no one had ever heard. The crew scrambled to make sense of it, their fear growing by the second. This was no ordinary species. No, this was something different. Something old, something that had been hidden in the deepest corners of the galaxy. The Council had always believed humans were just a myth. After all, the records were long lost, and no evidence had ever been found of their existence. Some old texts spoke of Earth, a planet that was home to a primitive species that had disappeared in a great conflict. But that was all it had ever been. A story told around campfires, a tale to scare the younger generations. But now, as the Zortan crew watched in awe and terror, the warship began to charge its weapons. The captain was frozen, his mind racing as the ship powered up. He tried to hail the massive vessel once more, but there was no response. Only the steady hum of the ship's energy systems as the warship's silhouette loomed larger in the viewport. "What is this?" the captain whispered. Who are these beings?" And just as quickly as the appearance of the warship, a new message came through, this one in a different language, one that the Zortan's translation system couldn't process. But the message was clear enough in its intent. It wasn't a friendly greeting. It wasn't a peace offer. It was a declaration. "We are not myths." In the Galactic Council, news of this event sent shockwaves through their ranks. The Zortan captain's report was brought to the attention of the most powerful leaders in the galaxy, even the most confident species, those who believed their dominance was unchallenged, could feel the weight of what was unfolding. If the humans were real and had survived all this time, it meant that something far more dangerous than anything they had faced before had just emerged. But still, the Council could not fully grasp the reality of what they were facing. Some laughed it off, convinced that the warship was some relic of an ancient species that had somehow survived. Others feared the worst, but didn't dare speak it out loud. They refused to believe that the myth of humanity could be anything more than a foolish legend. What none of them understood was that the humans, as fierce and powerful as they once were, had been waiting. They had been hiding in the shadows, watching the galaxy from afar. And now, the time had come to remind the Council of something they had forgotten. Humanity had always been there, and they were never as weak as the galaxy had believed. As the message was broadcast across the galaxy, a chilling realization dawned. The humans were not just a myth. They were alive, and they had returned with a purpose. The quiet hum of fear began to spread across the Council. The galaxy had just been forced to confront a truth they had long ignored. The humans had come back, and they weren't going to let anyone forget it. The galaxy's deadliest threat had just made its first move. In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, beyond the territories of the Galactic Council, stories were told of an ancient race, once powerful, now thought to be nothing more than a distant myth. These stories spoke of humans, beings from a planet called Earth. The Council, the governing body of the galaxy, believed humans to be extinct, their world destroyed long ago in an ancient war. For years, these stories faded into the background, remembered only by a few scholars and old-timers. The galaxy had moved on, flourishing under the rule of the Council, while humanity became a footnote in history. But there was something in the stars, a force that watched and waited. It started with strange reports from the outer systems that had been considered far too remote to be of any interest to the Council. Patrol ships reported unusual readings, disturbances in the space-time fabric, anomalies they couldn't explain. For a while, no one paid much attention. The galaxy was vast, and there were always unknowns. However, the reports began to intensify, becoming impossible to ignore. The Council, ever confident in its superiority, finally took notice. The lone scout ship was dispatched to investigate the source of these disturbances. The captain, a member of that excellent species known for their calm demeanor and precision, was no stranger to exploring the unknown. He'd ventured to countless uncharted worlds and encountered beings of all shapes and sizes. However, this was different. As the scout ship approached the source of the anomalies, it picked up something massive. A structure of unimaginable size, lurking just beyond the farthest edge of a nearby moon. The captain's heart skipped a beat as the ship's sensors detected something even stranger. This structure wasn't just a derelict ship or an abandoned station. It was active, pulsating with energy, and emanating a power that felt ancient. The captain ordered a closer inspection, his crew growing increasingly nervous. There was a sense of unease in the air, the kind that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. They were not alone. Before they could get any closer, the structure suddenly moved. It wasn't just shifting or drifting in space. It powered up, its engines igniting with a force that shook the very fabric of the galaxy around it. The captain's mind raced. This wasn't a relic. This was a warship. But not just any warship. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. As the ship came into full view, the captain's worst fears were realized. The structure was far too large and advanced to be of any known species. This was a human warship, a remnant of a long-forgotten race, still alive and very much capable of destruction. A signal was broadcasted from the warship, cutting through the silence of space. The message was cryptic, in a language that no one on the scout ship could understand. But the tone was unmistakable. This was no invitation to negotiate. The captain, barely able to comprehend the situation, ordered the ship to retreat. But before they could escape, a final transmission was received. It was brief, simple, and haunting. "We are not myths." The crew was stunned. The realization hit them like a freight train. The humans were not only alive, they had returned. The warship, this massive relic of a time long past, had emerged from the depths of space, and the galaxy's greatest fear had just become a reality. Meanwhile, on the far side of the galaxy, the Galactic Council had been monitoring the situation. The whispers of an ancient forgotten species had stirred something deep within the council members. It was a tension they hadn't felt in centuries. The Zortan, the council's foremost military race, dismissed the warnings, confident in their superior technology. They didn't believe the humans could be anything more than a relic of the past. But the appearance of the warship changed everything. The myth of the humans had been shattered. The warship was a clear message. Humanity was back, and they weren't interested in being forgotten. The council called an emergency meeting, the tension in the room palpable. The situation was unlike any they had ever faced. They had dealt with rogue species, galactic wars, and diplomatic crises, but this was different. This was a race they thought was long gone, a race that had once been feared and respected across the galaxy, a race that now had the ability to strike when the council least expected it. As the council deliberated, a chilling thought settled in their minds. The humans had been watching them all along. They had waited in the shadows, biding their time. Now the galaxy would know that the myth of the humans was not a story, but a warning. And if the council didn't act quickly, they would find themselves on the wrong side of history. In the dark corners of the galaxy, whispers grew louder. The humans were no longer a forgotten myth. They had returned, and they weren't going to let anyone forget it. The story of their survival had just begun, and it was a tale no one could ignore. The Galactic Council was in chaos. News of the massive warship's appearance spread like wildfire. No one had believed the reports at first. How could they? Humans were extinct. Their homeworld had been erased from the galactic maps centuries ago. And yet there it was, a warship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its design unfamiliar, its technology untraceable. The council chambers were filled with anxious voices, each species arguing about what to do next. Some, like the Zortan military leaders, insisted on immediate retaliation. They saw the warship as a threat that needed to be eliminated before it could strike first. Others, the more cautious members, suggested attempting communication. Though deep down, they knew the humans had made their message clear. We are not myths. Amidst the chaos, Grand Chancellor Vorik, a hardened leader of the council, silenced the room with a single motion. His species, the Dralkar, had been part of the original war that supposedly wiped out the humans. He had read the ancient war records, studied the last battles, and even seen the remains of Earth's final stand. If humans had truly returned, then the council was in grave danger. While the council debated, the warship remained still, floating ominously in the void of space. No further transmissions came, no hostile actions were taken. It simply waited. The silence was worse than an attack. Then, without warning, the warship moved. It wasn't an aggressive maneuver, nor did it appear to be an escape. Instead, it adjusted its position, almost as if scanning the area. The council scrambled, sending a fleet of scout ships to intercept. The warship did not react, until one of the scout ships made the mistake of locking weapons. In an instant, the warship came to life. Its systems hummed with energy, and a pulse of light shot through the darkness. It wasn't an attack, at least not a direct one. Every single ship within range went dark. Power systems failed, engines sputtered out, and weapons were rendered useless. It was a show of force, a warning. The warship could have destroyed them all in seconds. Instead, it chose to let them live. On the council's flagship, panic erupted. The Zortan general slammed his fists onto the table. They are toying with us. We must respond with full force. Grand Chancellor Vorik did not respond immediately. He was too focused on one detail. The warship had only disabled their ships, not destroyed them. This wasn't an act of war. It was a statement. Meanwhile, deep within the warship, unseen eyes watched the chaos unfold. Humanity had been patient for far too long. The galaxy had forgotten them, erased them from history. But now, the truth was clear. And the humans were ready. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was suffocating. Every species present felt the weight of the moment pressing down on them. The warship had made its move, And now the council had to decide how to respond. But fear clouded their judgment. No one wanted to admit it outright. But the truth was evident. They were unprepared for this. Grand Chancellor Vorik sat still, his reptilian fingers tapping against the cold surface of the conference table. He had seen countless battles, negotiated with warlords, and crushed rebellions. But this was different. The humans weren't acting like an invading force. They weren't issuing threats or making demands. They had simply arrived, proving that they existed. A holographic screen flickered to life. It was a live feed from the disabled scout ships, still floating helplessly in space. Engineers were scrambling to restore power, but nothing was working. Their weapons, shields, and engines were all locked down by an unknown force. Whatever the humans had done, it was beyond anything the Council had encountered before. "This is a disaster," hissed General Threx of the Zortan Dominion, his mandibles clicking together in frustration. "We should strike now while they are only one ship. We cannot afford to show weakness." Ambassador Dren of the Vorkari Alliance coughed. "And how do you propose we attack a ship that disabled an entire fleet without firing a single shot? You think throwing more ships at them will change the outcome?" Threx's mandibles flared. "We cannot just sit here and do nothing. If they are truly humans, they must be wiped out before they strike first." "Enough." Vorik's voice was calm, but the weight behind it silenced the room. His yellow eyes narrowed as he leaned forward. The humans were always a race of warriors, but they were also a race of strategists. If they wanted us dead, we would already be dead. Instead, they are waiting. The question is, for what? No one had an answer. Then a new signal appeared on the holographic display. A transmission. It was coming from the warship. The room tensed as the signal stabilized, and for the first time in centuries, the voice of a human echoed through the halls of the Galactic Council. "You thought we were gone." The voice was deep, calm, and chillingly precise. "You erased us from your records. You bury our history. You spread the lie that humanity was extinct." A pause. "But you were wrong. And now, we have returned." The transmission cut out, leaving only static. The chamber was silent. For the first time in galactic history, the Council had no idea what to do. The Council chamber was in chaos. The transmission from the human warship had shattered any illusions of control the Galactic Council once had. Delegates whispered in hushed tones, some calling for immediate action, others urging caution. No one could deny the gravity of the situation. Grand Chancellor Vorik remained still, his eyes locked on the holographic projection of the warship. It loomed over the disabled fleet like a predator watching its prey. The humans hadn't fired a single shot, yet they had already won the first battle, a battle of fear. "We must respond," General Threx growled, his clawed fingers gripping the edge of the table. "We cannot allow this insult to stand." Ambassador Dren shook his head. "Respond with what, General? More ships for them to disable. More proof of our weakness. Then what do you suggest? That we surrender?" Threx spat, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "We don't even know what they want yet." Dren shot back. "Perhaps they only wish to negotiate." "Negotiate?" Threx let out a sharp, hissing laugh. "You still do not understand what we are dealing with. These are humans. Do you not recall the ancient records? They do not negotiate. They conquer." The room fell silent at his words. The legends of humanity were old, passed down like myths. A species that had once spread across the stars, unchallenged and unbroken. A race of warriors who had shattered empires and rewritten the fate of countless civilizations. Then, without warning, they had vanished. Some believed they had been wiped out in a great war. Others thought they had destroyed themselves. The Council had chosen to erase their existence from history, convincing the galaxy that humanity had never been real, just a ghost story to frighten younglings. But now, the ghosts had returned. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. A new transmission was incoming. "Put it through," Vorik ordered, his voice steady. The holographic display flickered to life, and for the first time in millennia, the face of a human appeared before the Galactic Council. The figure was clad in a dark uniform, adorned with no insignia or rank. His face was calm, his expression unreadable. But his eyes held the weight of history. "You have many questions," the human said, his voice measured, "and we have answers. But first, you will listen." General Threx bristled. "We will not be ordered around by a..." Silence. The word was not shouted. It was not spoken with anger. And yet, it carried such weight that the entire chamber fell quiet. The human continued, his gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. "We know what you have done. We know the lies you have told. You erased us from history, hoping the galaxy would forget, hoping we would never return." His eyes darkened. "But we did return, and now we will decide your fate." The screen flickered and went dark. A heavy silence filled the room. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council was no longer the one making decisions. Panic spread like wildfire across the Galactic Council chamber. The humans' message was clear. They were not here to negotiate. They had returned with full knowledge of what had been done to them. And now the fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. Chancellor Vorik clenched his mandibles, his mind racing. What do they want? Revenge? Domination? Or something worse? "Prepare our fleets," General Threx demanded, his voice sharp. "If they think they can dictate terms to us, they will learn otherwise." Ambassador Dren shot him a look of disbelief. "Prepare what? You saw what they did. They disabled an entire fleet without firing a single shot. What do you think will happen if we provoke them further? We cannot simply roll over like cowards." Threx slammed a fist against the table. "We must show strength." Strength. Dren's voice was a low hiss. "Do you even remember why we erased them from history? Because their strength was unmatched. Every empire that ever challenged them was crushed. Every civilization that stood in their way was consumed by their relentless drive. They do not break. They do not yield." Threx fell silent. Dren exhaled and turned to Vorik. "We must learn what they want before we make a mistake that dooms us all." The Chancellor remained quiet for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Contact them again." A transmission was sent, but no reply came. The silence stretched for minutes, then hours. The tension across the galaxy was unbearable. Civilizations that had once believed humanity was nothing but a myth now watched in dread, realizing that the old stories had not been exaggerated. Then, at last, the response came. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the same human officer. But this time, he was not alone. Behind him stood figures dressed in different uniforms, their faces unreadable, their postures radiating authority. "You wish to understand our purpose," the officer said, his tone calm. "Then listen carefully." A new image replaced his face. A map of the galaxy, but not as it was now, as it had been long ago. Gasps filled the council chamber. The map showed borders that no longer existed, civilizations that had long since vanished. But one thing stood out above all else, a vast empire at the heart of the galaxy. The Terran Dominion. It had ruled for centuries, stretching further than any other power before it. The greatest minds, the most fearsome warriors, the most advanced technology. The humans had possessed them all. And then, one day, they disappeared. "You erased us," the officer said, "but we did not die. We did not fade. We watched. We waited." His gaze hardened. "And now, we return." Vorik's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just about revenge. This was a reclamation. The humans had not simply come back to remind the galaxy of their existence. They had come back to take back what was once theirs. The Galactic Council chamber was deathly silent. Every leader, every official, every strategist in the room stared at the holographic projection in horror. The implications of the humans' message were clear. This was not a mere confrontation. This was not a rebellion. This was a return. Chancellor Vorik's voice wavered. What? What do you mean by reclaiming what was yours? The human officer's eyes were cold. For centuries, we ruled these stars. We built them into something greater than they had ever been. But you feared us. You feared our power, our progress, our refusal to bow to outdated traditions. So you erased us. You tore down our monuments, burned our archives, and scattered our people to the fringes of space, thinking we would be forgotten. The council members remained frozen, trapped between disbelief and terror. But we did not forget, the officer continued. We watched as your civilizations rose and fell, as wars raged over meaningless territory, as corruption rotted your empires from the inside out. And we remained in the shadows, waiting for the moment when we would return to claim what was once ours. General Threx finally found his voice. If you think we will surrender our worlds to you without a fight, you are mistaken. He slammed a fist on the table. We still have fleets, armies, weapons. You have nothing that can stop us, the human interrupted. Suddenly, the holographic projection changed. A live feed appeared, showing the outer rim of the council's territories, or what remained of them. Gasps of horror filled the chamber. Planetary defense stations floated lifeless in space, their weapons disabled. Battleships, once proud and mighty, now drifted like wreckage, powerless against an enemy that had not even fired a shot. We have already taken back what was ours, the humans said. Your fleets are useless. Your technology is decades behind ours. Your empires are built on a foundation of lies. The only reason you still stand is because we allow it. Chancellor Vorik felt the weight of the moment crushing down on him. The truth was undeniable. The humans had already won. What do you want? He asked at last. The officer studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was not a cruel smile, nor an arrogant one. It was simply inevitable. We do not seek to rule you, he said. We do not need your surrender. He leaned forward, and the entire chamber felt the power behind his words. You will simply step aside, and remember why you once feared us. And with that, the transmission ended. The chamber remained in stunned silence. Outside, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The humans had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again.